Iraq's bloodiest battle will be a video game. gameNajla Bassim Abdulelah grew up in a war. The regular sight of dead bodies and the memory of her friend being shot next to her as they walked to school stained her childhood. Children's laughter was replaced with an incessant soundtrack of exploding bombs. And she lived with a crippling fear of losing her family. So when Abdulelah, who now lives in Atlanta, Georgia, heard that 6 Days in Fallujah, a first-person shooter video game set during the Iraq's bloodiest battle, was on the verge of being released, she was horrified. For Abdulelah and other Iraq war survivors, the imminent release of 6 Days in Fallujah threatens to reopen old wounds and trivialize their pain. They want the game shelved. A massive killing of Arabs part documentary and part video game. 6 Days in Fallujah uses gameplay to recount history and recreate true stories from the Second Battle of Fallujah. The offensive, code-named Operation Phantom Fury, saw the U.S. Marines lead a joint force of American, British and Iraqi troops into the ancient city.
In Fallujah, U.S.-led forces went house to house hunting for suspected insurgents. Fighters on both sides, as well as thousands of innocent Iraqis caught in the crossfire, did their best to avoid snipers and booby traps. We were told going into Fallujah, into the combat area, that every single person that was walking, talking, breathing was an enemy combatant. As such, every single person that was walking down the street or in a house was a target. Jeff Engelhardt, a former U.S. soldier with the 3rd Brigade, 1st Infantry Division, said in the 2005 documentary Fallujah, The Hidden Massacre. U.S.-led forces used more than 300 bombs, 6,000 rounds of artillery, and 29,000 mortar rounds, according to the U.S. Marines. Military officials also confirmed that troops used white phosphorus, a highly controversial incendiary weapon that burns the skin. Ross Caputi, a former U.S. Marine with the 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, recalls some of the controversial tactics used during the battle, including firing grenades or gun rounds into homes before entering, in case insurgents were hiding inside. Describing the aftermath, Engelhardt said, "It seemed like just a massive killing of Arabs. It looked like just a massive killing." A new way to understand history. 6 Days in Fallujah was originally developed by Atomic Games and set to be released by Japanese game publisher Konami in 2010. But the Tokyo-based company withdrew from the project a year early due to widespread criticism that it was offensive. Atomic Games went out of business and the project was shelved. In February 2021, developer Highwire Games and publisher Victura, founded by former Atomic Games CEO Peter Tamt, announced they were resurrecting 6 Days in Fallujah. The game is set to be released by the end of 2021. It's hard to understand what combat is actually like through fake people doing fake things in fake places, Tamt said in a statement announcing the game's release. This generation showed sacrifice and courage in Iraq as remarkable as any in history. And now they are offering the rest of us a new way to understand one of the most important events of our century. It's time to challenge stereotypes about what games can be. To that end, the developers say they collaborated with more than 100 service members who provided testimony, photographs, and videos to recreate real events with authenticity and respect. They also interviewed 27 Iraqis, 23 of whom are from Fallujah. In the game, a player can choose to be a U.S. serviceman leading a team on missions against insurgents, or an unarmed Iraqi father trying to escape with his family to safety. While playing, gamers will hear from real U.S. service members, who narrate the missions, and Iraqi civilians, who relay their experiences. Developers regularly consult with Iraqis on how they are portrayed in the game, Tamt says. If a player shoots an Iraqi civilian, the mission ends in failure. The only Iraqis who are allowed to be killed are insurgents. An Arab murder simulator. Abdulelah understands the premise of 6 Days in Fallujah and Victura's rationale for releasing the game. She's a gamer herself. But she says that taking a real-life event, in which people suffered and died, and turning it into a game trivializes the experience. There are more respectful and credible ways to learn about what happened in Fallujah, she says, pointing to news stories, books, and documentaries produced about the battle. I got chills in my spine thinking about the idea that they can use the scenario of someone escaping something so tragic for a game, Abdulelah said, referring to the scenario in which a player can choose to be an Iraqi father fleeing with his family. It brings me to tears. How is this okay? Mohammed Hussein, also an Iraqi American, says he was hurt and disturbed by news that the game will be released. He worries that the game will lessen the battle's significance, especially among young players. Hussein, whose parents are Iraq war refugees, also worries that insurgents in the game look like typical Iraqi men, which he said could lead to bias in the real world. Screenshots from the game show some insurgents distinguished by black and white headdress, which is common attire in Iraq and other Arab countries. It dehumanizes Iraqi people, showing how some are insurgents, some are Al-Qaeda, some are civilians, with no way of differentiating them. It desensitizes this generation to this kind of violence against our people, he said. The Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, worries that the game could reinforce harmful stereotypes of Iraqis, as well as other Arabs and Muslims. Karen Veterans for Peace repeated calls on Friday to shelve 6 days in Fallujah. In August, they issued a public letter denouncing it as a game that glorifies violence that took the lives of over 800 Iraqi civilians, justifies the illegal invasion of Iraq, and reinforces Islamophobic narratives. Narat Rapenhajan, VFP's executive director, is a former U.S. Army sniper who served in the Sunni Triangle during the Second Battle of Fallujah. How would you feel? Victura is standing firm in its decision to release 6 days in Fallujah. It insists the game provides a new and exciting way for people to learn about what happened there. When we originally announced 6 days in Fallujah in 2009, we learned that some people believe video games shouldn't tackle real-life events. To these people, video games seem more like toys than a medium capable of communicating something insightful. We disagree, the makers said in a statement in February. Video games can connect us in ways other media cannot.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.